So this is something that's not in the manual, or at least I don't recall it being in there. It might be. Um, this is something that one of the guys at the Fitech shop showed me when I had my unit down there one of the times. Uh, I didn't know that you could do this because if you read the manual on the IAC setup, what they tell you to do is to fire it up, and if your steps are if they're above the 10 mark, you want to increase your throttle blade, which a lot of times it's above that. Sometimes it's below the 3 mark or 0, which means you would want to close the throttle blades a little bit. Um, so when you do that, closing them more than where your TPS, or your throttle position sensor, is at 0, if that number goes negative, it automatically just changes it to a 0. Um, so that part is easier. So if your throttle blades are too far open, you can back the screw out when it's running. You don't have to worry about the TPS because the TPS will always be 0. It can't ever go negative. But if you need to open the throttle blades more, your TPS is going to go up because it thinks that you're opening the throttle, which will throw off the system because it's going to think you're pressing the throttle. So what they tell you to do is to check it if it's above if it's above the 10 mark where you need to open the blades more to get the IAC number to go down. I hope I'm explaining this right. Or at least if it makes sense. But so if you need to open the blades more to get the IAC number to go down, you are going to turn that screw in. And so when you turn that screw in, it thinks you're opening the throttle, and it's got throttle position, so that changes a whole bunch of other variables in the system. So we want to avoid that. So what they tell you to do, before I show you this, but what they tell you to do is to shut the engine off, turn the screw in a quarter turn, start it back up, and that effectively re-zeros the TPS, because anytime the ignition's off, the TPS goes back to 0. So if you hold the TPS open a little bit and then you turn the key off, you turn the key back on, it's going to be back at 0 again. But there's another way to do that, and this is what the guys showed me at the shop. It's called idle set mode. So you go in, and the menu is probably a little bit different depending on what firmware you have on your unit or in your handheld. On mine, it looks like this. You go down to initial setup, you go to idle setup, and you go down to idle set mode. So when it's running, it's running, the throttle is at the 0 position. You actually switch this to on, and you can send it to the ECU. I'm not going to do it right now. I don't want to change my settings, and this thing's not warmed up right now, so I can't show you guys actually how to set this. But this process is the same no matter what. So you set it to on and send it to the ECU, and when you do that, now you can go and turn the screw in, and the TPS won't think that the TPS is changing. So it's a lot faster to be able to set your IAC steps without having to constantly turn the engine on and back off. You can just leave it running, put this into on or 1. It's probably a 0 and a 1 on some of these, I think. But 1 is always on, 0 is always off. So you can set that to idle set mode, turn that on, get it all set, get your IAC where you want it, and then turn idle set mode off. There's no monkeying around with starting and stopping the engine every time or having to worry about the TPS not being 0. So I'm hoping that this makes sense the way that I explained it. I'd like to actually show you guys how to do it. I'd have to fire this thing up and drive it and get it warm over 170 degrees where it's warmed up. And I could I can purposely change my IAC to show you how to set it. But maybe I'll do that in another video. But this is just a really quick kind of explanation of idle set mode. And like I said, I don't think it's in the manual. It might be, but I don't remember reading it. But the guys at the Fitech, I've been to their shop a few times, actually showed me how to do this. So anyways, that's idle set mode. And just to confirm, I just flipped through the handheld controller definitions, unless there's one. This is a few years old, so I don't know if they've updated it, but I looked through idle control, and it does not talk about idle set mode. It's got reset idle learn, which I've used many times because I've futzed around with the system so many times. But it does not talk about idle set mode in here, not anywhere that I can see. So, I guess it holds true. Not everything is in the manual, but so if somebody else knows where it is in some manual that I don't know about, let me know. But I'm not seeing it in here. So, anyways, idle set mode. That's how you use it.